What's poppin', people? It's Dante. Today we're going to be discussing slow shutter speed street photography. So, as you can see on the screen, I have a photo I just made in Shinjuku, Tokyo, Japan that really came to me from making an accident or just making a kind of small mistake. It's not a mistake. It's really just noticing something different, something new that sparked me to intentionally create something using the slow shutter speed effect in street photography. And so we're going to look at the photos, look at the camera settings, and a behind the scenes video of me working in this particular scene. Before I get my day started here in Tokyo, just in my hotel room now. Just figured I'd turn the iPad on and share with you some thoughts about this process and how I came to this conclusion of making this image. Now, as you can see here in this photograph I made outside of the Shibuya area, this is the Shibuya station. I made a photograph at 1/15th of a second. Now, I made this photograph at 1/15th of a second because I was using AV mode in my camera. So I was using the aperture priority mode, setting my aperture to f8, and simply making pictures like I would typically do, trying to practice the layering technique here at the scene. I was observing how people are moving in and out of the train station. And as people were moving in and out of the train station extremely quickly, I was trying to isolate the subject in the background in the light. And I noticed the way that the effect of silhouettes were appearing on my LCD screen as I was making pictures here with my Ricoh GR III. And so by using the 28mm focal length, I'm able to sort of step back and capture these like wider scenes with more layers and more dynamics. And the thing that really piqued my curiosity, however, was when I'm at scenes like this and I'm taking lots of pictures, like for instance here, I probably took hundreds of photos because there's so much unpredictability and spontaneity with the way people move. That girl in the background was sitting on her phone the entire time. And so I was waiting for a moment for her to like look up from her phone or like just do anything besides just stare at her phone. Which is fine because I think a lot of the photos we make nowadays, it's going to be difficult, especially in Tokyo. What I'm realizing is a lot of people are either zoned out on their phone or just like scrambling around. But to get to the point, I looked at the LCD screen and I noticed how the silhouettes were a bit blurred. And so after I made this particular picture, I went and tried to push myself to then shoot in manual mode. And so I put my camera into manual mode and I lowered my shutter to 1/4 of a second. And so I went to 1/4 of a second and I waited outside of the train station and made a photo of this girl who was standing across from me along the wall, a little bit more still, and then separating her from the subjects that are moving into the train station with this very much intentional motion blur photograph that I made using a slow shutter speed. And so this was the first night that I tried this effect, and I did it out of making a small sort of observation or a small mistake in my process by shooting at an extremely lower shutter speed than usual at 1/15th of a second. And so the beauty with the Ricoh as well is that you can actually stabilize the camera pretty nicely at nighttime to freeze the action in the background if you can hold the camera at a particular way that is steady. And so the next day I went out and at nighttime I thought to myself, I need to execute a photo actually using this technique. And so I went out and I worked a scene here in the Shinjuku station area. And so we're going to look at the behind the scenes video of me working the scene, just discussing the technique, and then look at the photograph that I made. Yo, what's poppin', people? It's Dante doing some night photography here in Shinjuku, Japan. Welcome to Tokyo. And so I'm using a slow shutter speed today, photographing with the Ricoh GR III in manual mode with f16 and my shutter speed at 1/4 of a second. So I'm photographing with a very slow shutter speed. My exposure compensation is +1, and I'm essentially just stabilizing my camera by holding it and just not moving it around. And the goal, okay, so my snap focus is 3.5 meters, so I can get these people that are stationary against the wall in focus. And so the people that are coming around and rushing around this station will be blurred. And the 1/4 of a second is providing a very ethereal look in the pictures I'm making. And I'm essentially just waiting for an overlap as people come into the scene here, using those buildings in the background as a nice kind of like backdrop. And then of course the white background being a clean sort of separation wall. It's a really nice sort of scene here, honestly. Got these people just hanging out on the wall. Lots of energy, lots of lights from the sort of neon signs and things. And people coming in and out of the station. So
Yeah, just figured I'd share behind the scenes of how I'm making this kind of picture using slow shutter speeds today to create a more dramatic ethereal effect in my street photography. And I think it's a very simple technique that can elevate something mundane, like people walking to and fro in a train station, to something a little bit more extraordinary and interesting here, photographing low light in Shinjuku, Tokyo.
Alright, so as you can see, the result of the photograph was made with these particular settings on the left-hand side. So I pretty much use automatic ISO, so the ISO is going to be automatically set. However, the one thing I do is I increase my exposure compensation dial to +1, and I was actually shooting at f16. So you can see on the screen, f16 was set, and it looks like I shot this at 1/3 of a second. So I was playing with the settings manually here, and yeah, you might be thinking, why f16? Well, the goal is to get as much in focus as possible, you know, despite shooting at night and these low light situations. Lowering my shutter speed to 1/3 of a second, I believe, was enough to allow more light into the frame. And so with this picture, you know, what's interesting is the unpredictability and the spontaneity of what can emerge in the image. It's quite out of your control, right? Like, what you can control is where you position your physical body in relationship to the subject and the background, and when you click the shutter with street photography. And so now what I'm starting to think about more is you're also in control of your shutter. You're in control of the settings. And so I was playing with the settings on this particular day, something I really don't do. And I did this intentionally, and it came through me making a small mistake and then applying it to my practice. And I feel like with this picture, I kind of broke through creatively by intentionally using this new approach to my photography through experimenting and tinkering with the process itself. And so, simply put, I stayed put, positioned myself in relationship to those three subjects that were, I think, club promoters, perhaps, and they were waiting outside of the train station as people were passing by. I lowered my shutter speed, I held my camera next to my waist, and made this picture. And, you know, it came through lots of time spent. I was probably there for 15 to 20 minutes. I don't really know how long exactly, but I like to make lots of pictures, lots of mistakes, lots of shitty photos are made, and then sometimes something magical reveals itself, where this woman in the center of the frame almost looks like she's emerging as a ghost, or is floating like a holographic person that's kind of spawning into the scene here, almost like a Tokyo ghoul. And you know, we have that beautiful skyline in the background, right? We have this scene here that I believe captures that sort of raw, sort of gritty, visceral energy of nightlife in Tokyo, which is something I was really looking forward to doing while on this trip, is pushing myself to shoot at nighttime. You know, the thing with me is I get really tired by the time it's night. I like to go to bed extremely early, and I like to come home and go through my photos every night so that I can move on to the next day. But yeah, on this day, I pushed myself to practice this new technique at night. I put myself outside of my comfort zone, which is typically shooting in the day with available light, like in the direct sunlight, and really pushed myself once again with this new technique of using a slow shutter speed. And so I think this video, it's mostly about me exploring something new and hopefully sharing with you how making mistakes and learning from the process can actually help you with a creative breakthrough. And so this isn't necessarily a tutorial for me to share with you exactly how to apply this technique, but I think it's more of a way for me to kind of poke and nudge at you that you can push yourself to experiment and to tinker with your process to create new results that maybe surprise you. And you know, for me, this is the goal with my kind of photography these days. Shooting in high contrast black and white is teaching me that, you know, I'm merely curious about what will reality manifest to be in a photograph. Meaning, a lot of the photographs we make are merely a result of the camera observing life. You know, of course, you have two eyes that are connected to your brain that allow you to see and perceive the world with sharp visual acuity. But a lot of the time, what you see isn't necessarily what you get, but what you get is what you didn't see. And so when I'm photographing and using black and white, I'm naturally abstracting reality, and it almost feels as though I'm looking beyond the veil. And my goal is to create something from nothing. My goal is to take something ordinary, from a scene of people walking in and out of a train station, to an extraordinary height, to a transcendental height, to go beyond this world and to create a new world in a fraction of a second. And to me, that's the power of photography. It gives you that ability to create a new world. And so I created a new world here at 1/3 of a second. And so yeah, hopefully through looking at this video slideshow and looking at my camera settings, behind the scenes videos, and approaching the streets, you can better understand my mindset and how pushing through and making mistakes has allowed me to creatively push and break through with this picture, I think. And so, yeah, that's pretty much it with this video. If you enjoyed this video, please feel free to visit the website at dantesisifo.com. In the link on the top of this description of this video, I'll provide with you a blog post with this exact video, looking at the images. And yeah, I also have a books tab where you can find the ultimate Ricoh GR street photography guide. If you like these photos that I make with my Ricoh, you can learn all about my settings, technique, and snapshot philosophy and apply it to your own photography. I also have a contact sheets ebook where you can look at behind the scenes of my photos, and then the mastering, layering, and street photography guide where you can learn about the art of layering, which I believe is the foundation to great photography. And so, yeah, you might be wondering why I make these videos, why am I sharing the behind the scenes of my process and explaining things as I learn and grow. And I think what's interesting is to sort of share the journey, share the process, share all of the shitty photos that I make, share all of the mistakes, share all of the things that I learn along the way, so that hopefully by just being open, being transparent, and sharing with you exactly how I'm doing things and how I'm evolving and transforming as an artist, it gives you the permission to also strive to become the greatest artist that you can be. And so that's why I create these resources, that's why I create these videos, is to empower you as a photographer to push yourself, to transform and to evolve, and yeah, to grow together. And so I'm just basically sharing the evolution of my photography and anything I learn along the way. Yeah, with that being said, it's definitely time for me to get going and start my day on the streets of Tokyo. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace. Oh, I gotta shave too.